Welcome into a special edition of the Stu Peters Show. My name is Stu Peters. The Stu Peters Show was contacted by Maria Zack. She's the founder of Nations in Action, who we've talked to before regarding Italy's alleged involvement in the outcome of the 2020 presidential election here in the United States. Zack is here today because she wants to introduce Philippe Argillier. Philippe Argillier says that he was in the room when COVID-19 was planned many years ago. Zack says that Argillier has purchased certain data banks that implicate a small group of powerful people that control what we refer to as a shadow government. That shadow government, Zack says, controls once-free citizens, depopulates the globe, manipulates big tech, and enriches their cause through the military-industrial complex via war. Maria Zack joins us now. In the simplest terms, you've said that you're bringing the man that can end all of the tyranny that we're seeing today and expose these individuals that are behind this shadow government.
Stu, I am so pleased to be with you to help awaken not just America, but everyone around the world, that they can now know how government truly functions. The opportunity to have this occur on your show is so significant because you do not censor, you allow freedom of speech. Across Europe, that has not been the case. And of course, as we know, our United States media has been co-opted, hijacked by this very element called the shadow government. This man has the goods. They've tried to stop him from speaking. And today you are allowing him to have the opportunity to speak out, people to vet what he is saying, to learn about this shadow government, and most importantly, the strength of the data banks and how this purchase in September 1st changed everything in the world of what the shadow government used to leverage these corporations, the banking industry, the Vatican, everything from human trafficking. It is the head of the snake. And I am so excited because he has witnessed this at the top level, being a very well-trained government affairs global leader. He has actually worked for 20 years with these global leaders. He has extensive backgrounds in the contracts, and these contracts are what started building the data banks. These intelligence guys around the world started seeing all their governments fall from corruption. They started building data banks. Many of the intel in governments, some of the private industry actually has intelligence banks that equals or is better than our own NSA and CIA. Those data banks are so valuable that we were offered bribes this past weekend. I was offered 5 million euros in a tax-free account abroad to shut down my investigation. The answer, of course, was no how, no way. And we will never betray God, our country, or the world. And this now is a global issue because, as you said, Philippe Argillier is the man, our source, that is coming out today on your show to tell the world he was in the room when he was actually asked, after retiring from doing the government contracts and trying to build a global movement throughout Europe for unity and human rights and to end the shadow government. He was called back in for a meeting in 2015. That significant date is 7 years prior to the start of COVID. And the deal was actually to build a COVID release and a vaccine, all by Bill Gates and some of these in the shadow government. There are 38 members. He'll go into that. And the power of the data banks today. There was a meeting just a few days ago in Cap d'Aille, the south of France, with the shadow leader consultants to inform them that there was no how, no way that I was budging. And he was not accepting their offer for 20 billion euros to purchase those data banks. We are at war with the shadow government, and we are going to end it. So I am very, very grateful for you having Philippe on your show. And I love that you are an investigative reporter. You're willing to dig in, find the truth, figure out his pathway forward for what he can share for taking them down. And most importantly, Stu, that evidence, the proof. He has shown us contracts. I hope he will share with you and the world. And I know he has personally invited you and others to come to the south of France to witness and see these documents held within the data banks.
So many questions. How did you meet Philippe Argillier?
So actually, we have a couple different ways that we know Philippe, and we have been vetting him. We have worked very much night and day with him for the past 4 months. We have kept it under wraps for most of that time because we knew exactly what would happen is the whole psychological operation and disinformation campaign would get ratcheted up, and you're going to see that on your feeds and everything you do going forward. This is not for the risk averse. You are not cowardly. You are someone who is courageous, and that's why you were selected for this interview. And when he reached out to us, and he can tell you himself, he was familiar with our investigation on Italy, and he gained trust in us because we were willing to get out there and tell the truth. He had a data point that I don't even believe I gave on your show to the audience of June in 2020 was the go date. He knew the exact day. I did not give that day to anyone. I only gave the month and the go date that was reconfirming, but he also had a date I didn't have of why. I had the who, what, when, where. I knew it was Arturo Delia was in Leonardo at the Satellite Center using mil-spec software. I knew that they did it from the 3rd to the 4th and they had trouble. There were so many votes for Donald Trump and they couldn't keep up, and that caused the spikes. He witnessed and watched those interviews, and he's been watching all my interviews, which is kind of interesting to me, but he is seeing how we handle ourselves and digging down hard on what the proof is, the track record. We've talked to General McInerney about the military patterns of how to validate what is being said. Those patterns have been phenomenal. I don't want to just learn things off the internet. I need to validate far beyond that. So I was able to actually validate him through many contacts, a few different contacts, not many, but a few different contacts that I now know for a fact. I have been told he is a good man. The people who know him are from totally diverse areas, and the intel community is telling me absolutely. So people both abroad and in the US have validated him to me from the intel side.
So specifically how you met him is he came to you, he got a hold of you.
He got a hold of me, and honestly, I think it's a God thing. Honestly, Stu, I know it's a God thing because he knew about our work, and I'm very grateful.
Exposing 38 people that allegedly run the world, they run the whole show. Yeah. Does that mean that these 38 people hold captive leaders of nations around the globe? For example, the president of the United States, do they control Joe Biden? Did they control Donald Trump? Did they control all of the predecessors to those presidents, Barack Obama? I mean, Clinton, we can go all the way back. Did these people control the actions of the White House and of our Congress and of the US Senate and of our government here?
He will tell you that it's 60% of all of the United States government interactions are held by the shadow government, and they also control many other governments around the world. Yes. Now, I can tell you, since we've fallen, people here in the United States and the intel community have discussed with us that the number has increased dramatically up to 80 and in some places 90% of all actions because of the loss of America.
What would you say during my talk with Philippe Argillier is going to be the most important thing for my neighbors out here, my church congregation, the fellow mothers and fathers at hockey, the regular, everyday, blue-collar, hardworking American who wants their freedom and liberty back? How is Philippe Argillier going to help us do that, and how can they trust him?
A fantastic question. We're taking it as fast as we can, because this is like a patient bleeding out on the side of the street, and we're trying to resuscitate our country. And so we need patience, we need prayers, but we need to have an understanding that it is a very high level strategic game of dismantling something that has been in place for decades. This is not new. This didn't just happen under Obama or under just Biden and the theft of this election against Donald Trump. Donald Trump was just an anomaly, someone who got in their way. And so they had to take him down. So your neighbors need to know we're working hard and fast. And And I can tell you, Philippe is committed to doing what he can to move as fast as he can. He doesn't want conflict from the shadow government, but there was a meeting in Cap just a few days ago, and it did not go well. The shadow government does not want to go back into their cave and end this. They want to continue their reign. So we're at war with them, and we will do everything to eradicate and out them. And of course, we're only here at Nations in Action. We're limited by when he pivots on different things he wants to do. So it's my hope that we can build a strong army of people to support what he is pulling out when he needs support for us to end this nightmare.
So just being 100% candid here, you say things like this, it sounds like a fictional movie. I mean, it sounds like Bizarro World. It sounds like totally pretend and made up and fake. So why should people believe that any of this is real? I mean, shadow government this and control and manipulate that, and the military-industrial complex and COVID-19. I mean, these are serious issues, and all of this sounds fictional. But I believe that we're watching a movie script play out in different scenes. We're talking about Afghanistan one week, then we're not. Then we're talking about COVID-19 again, then we're not. Then we're having a mask debate, then we're not. Now we're having vaccine debates, then we're not. Then we're talking about the military. You know, I mean, it seems like a very carefully written movie is playing out around the globe, which means I'm all open to ears. I'm willing to listen to anybody, but when somebody's coming forward making claims like this, that I don't take lightly, especially broadcasting it on this platform.
Absolutely agree, Stu. And I would say, you know, what we see on the internet and have seen for some time, Bill Gates has not been quiet about his belief in depopulation. We knew Planned Parenthood was funded to get rid of Blacks. I mean, Margaret Sanger was blatant about it. Bilderberg is out there blatant about their plans. So when you look at this, this is not a surprise. And I will tell you, 10 years ago, and I apologized recently to a friend who I said, get your tinfoil hat off. And now I'm eating my words, and I publicly apologize to my team because I didn't believe them. But as you dive into the federal budget and you talk to congressmen and you go, come on, what's the gig? Fess up, is there a shadow government? Recently, there was a congressman at a meeting in Georgia, and they're pretty hot with everything happening. And it's a candidate for Secretary of State who's a congressman, and Jody Heiss. And he was asked, is there a shadow government? And his answer to the entire audience was yes. And then they asked him, who is it? He goes, we don't really know. We suspect it's Soros.
But Philippe Argillier does know.
He knows. He's been in the room with their consultants. He knows exactly who is where.
All right. And we did.
And every congressman needs to watch your show because it's evident they have a lesson, and shame on them for not talking sooner, Stu. Think about this. They've been spending our budget trillions of dollars, and they know it goes to a shadow government, but yet they don't know who it is. What the heck? So anyone should go look at the budget, and especially the military budget, and start asking questions and looking at these banks. We've got a lot more coming out on those banks, so we're going to be sharing that as well.
And I just for a little pat on the back here, we did recently speak with George Papadopoulos on this show, who we specifically asked. It almost seems like there's some sort of a shadow government running things. Is that true? Do you believe in that? George Papadopoulos said that he does agree with that theory. Maria Zach, thank you for bringing him, and we're going to allow Philippe Argillier the opportunity to tell the world, to tell our audience exactly what it is that he has. Thank you.
Thank you, Stu, and all the best in digging down and helping us solve this problem. You're going to help save America and save the world. God bless you.
God bless. Philippe Argillier joins us now from France. You heard what Maria Zach said, a lot of extremely serious claims that you are coming forward with these data banks. So first, I think it's really important for the audience to understand, who is Philippe Argillier? What exactly do you have? And why are you coming forward with this now?
Well, first, Stu, thank you very much for having me on your show. I was able to look at some of your interviews, and from our perspective, we really appreciate your being very straightforward with the programs you do, and that's the reason I said that I wanted to be part of your show.
Of course.
So first, on behalf of RDH and HRU, and I'll tell you who we are with this. Thank you very much for doing the work you do.
Of course.
So who am I? Yeah, that is a good question, and I will answer. First, in order to answer this question, I have to give you a little history of the work that I've done. And until 2001, I had nothing to do with governmental affairs. I was in high finance. I was building resorts all over the world, dealing with hedge funds, and also owning casinos, nightclubs, restaurants. So as you can see, it had nothing to do with government affairs. Until the day one of my partners gave me a phone call and said that one of his close friend, was a president of a very small country of Africa. And apparently the president himself was very impressed by the work that I've done, and particularly making some of the lost lands, making them beautiful resorts. So he told me that one of his consul would be meeting with me, and to ask me if maybe I could be part of working with him, with his country. So I was very open, but to begin with, I stated very clearly that I had nothing to do with in the past with any governments, and I did not have any experience also with governmental affairs. This being said, I was back in the south of France. My offices were in Luxembourg, Liechtenstein, and I did receive a phone call from my protocol department asking me to attend a meeting in Monte Carlo with one official, apparently a consul from a small country of Africa. So it did make sense because I was warned that this would be happening. So I did say okay, and we had this meeting in Monaco, a Hotel de Paris in Monte Carlo. And that was in 2020, and 2000. And the man came, and we spoke about the sun and how beautiful the south of France was for about 5-10 minutes. Then I said, okay, what is this meeting regarding? And he said, well, our president would like you to be part of our economy. And I said, how impressive. And I said, thank you very much. But I don't have any experience in respect of governmental affairs. And he said, well, that should not be a problem. You do have experience in resorts. So we have a beautiful coast, and maybe you could expand this and help us bring our tourism back in order. And I said, well, that could be a pretty good interest. So they handed me at the time a one-page contract. And I was kind of surprised because, as you know, Stu, even if you were to purchase a small unit, you're going to have to deal with many pages with the notary and so forth. Here we were dealing with a government and asking me to basically, in this page, not only to take care of tourism, but to help them in their economy, because they wanted to use some of my financial platforms at the time. If you were familiar with offshore companies, there were very few of them. And we had the strongest management company or offshores set in the Liechtenstein and Luxembourg. So it was very clear to me that the president himself wanted to use those structures, but at the same time, indeed, he wanted to develop tourism in his country. So I said to the representative that I would be meeting him the following week, and I did. And I wrote him a handwritten, because first page was handwritten. I did the same thing, except that I added a second page. And actually, at the time, this was reviewed by a firm, an American firm that you might be familiar with in the United States. It's called Arnold and Porter. They actually take care of a lot of affairs for the White House. And my lawyer said, listen, Philippe, the 2 pages that you wrote are very good. Please do not mention that we actually agreed on those terms, because it is so outrageous. And in a way, I wanted to make sure that I was maybe taking the contract a little bit too far, hoping that they will say, we're not moving forward with you. And so the meeting took place, and I showed my 2 pages. And indeed, he said, you're pushing a little bit too much, Mr. Argillier. And I said, thank you very much. I was honored by your president, let him know that that's basically all I could have done. And so we're not going to move forward. And this is where he all started, Stu, and he said, wait a minute. I said, wait a minute. What are you going to be doing? He said, I'm going to call the president. And I said, well, you're not going to call the president right here in front of me in this suite at Hotel de Paris in Monte Carlo. No. He said, well, let me go outside in the hallway and I'll be back. And I said, well, go ahead. And I waited about 20 minutes. I have no idea what he said to the president. No matter what, for me, it was done. I was not moving forward because they said that we're not doing anything with your contract. And he came back and he said, congratulations. And I said, congratulations. He said, you got it. And that was my very first contract. My first contract was signed on May 30th, 2001. Prior to that date, we had numerous meetings, and it became very clear that they were asking me to help them grow their economy. At the time, even though I had not done a thorough work on the actual country and its geopolitical affiliations with the other countries, I was very focused on the work I was expected to do. So I signed my contract, and September 11th, 2001 hit. That was, for all of us, something that no one expected. And the next thing I knew, I received a phone call, and I said, they told me that they needed to see me. I'm talking about the country I had signed the contract with. And I was not sure if this had anything to do with September 11th, even though I thought that somewhere, somehow, there would be some type of connection. And indeed there was. And so this was not very clear in the beginning, but I was asked to look for some location in the country that I had signed the contract with, to locate some US troops to be expected by the end of 2001. And without giving me any further information. And to me, it was very, from my own personal perspective, I thought it was very suspicious. But since I had signed a contract, I moved forward. And but at the same time, feeling that there would be something maybe for the future for me to keep as very sensitive information, I created my first data bank on November 8th, 2001. So my first governmental contract was signed on May 30th, 2001. November 8th, 2001, creation of the first data bank. And indeed, the US troops arrived by the end of November 2001. I remind you that Bush declared the war of Iraq on March 2003. So at this minute, I believe that that's all I will say regarding this topic. But it is part of our data bank, and we did work from 2001 to 2003. We did help put some contract related directly to Iraq, even though we had no idea when and if any war would be declared.
So I think that we're
2003, the US declared the war.
We're starting to talk about a lot of content. The declaration of war, September 11th, is obviously an extremely sensitive day here in the United States. We're starting to get into some content. But I guess when I asked, who are you, what do you have, and why are you coming forward, the who are you part, other than Philippe Argillier, that I want to establish here for the listening audience is, what credibility do you have? Why should everybody believe all of the things that I'm going to ask you about? Why should they believe your answers here today?
Well, it's very, Stu, it would be up to your audience to believe me or not to believe me. No matter what, we will bring proof along the way. And you did actually follow our, since 2015 up to October 3rd, 2021, you heard about the great work of the data banks. And so who am I? I have been, for the past 20 years, a consultant for governments. For one specific country, I've been a partner financial partner for one very specific country. And today I have decided to bring transparency to what I would refer as to a shadow government that I've been very familiar with for the past 15 years. And if you want, I can explain to you what is a shadow government and what it has anything to do or everything to do with the official government that you elect every 4 years in your country.
Prior to you coming on, we spoke with Maria Zach, and I said to her, this sounds like a movie. This sounds fictional when we start throwing around words like shadow government. So yes, what is the shadow government and who's a part of it?
Well, first, it does sound, and I absolutely relate to the people thinking that this could be basically a bad B movie. But the truth is that this is real. This is real. The shadow government has been conducting your daily lives, and not only you, for close to 8 billion people on Earth. Shadow government is simply a group of some people behind the scene that have worked very closely with official government to put geopolitical agreements directly affiliated to military interventions in the world, only focus for a platform they only relate to. We have to understand, and for the people to understand on your show, a shadow government is extremely powerful, much more powerful than any elected government. The shadow government is actually the one who put together the agenda of each new government. And you do have very powerful billionaires behind it. Some of them are American, very well known to all of the American people and known all over the world. And they are being part of an agenda that is directly put together with them, for them, and not directly for the people of the world. And that's why I'm here for. You're asking me, why am I here for? This is very personal. This is something that I do for myself, for my family, and it's the work of God. I really honestly, Stu, if after our interview, people say this is a bunch of whatever, and we're not going to believe Philippe Argillier, it's fine. I don't really care. I know what I had to do, and my work is to give full transparency of what happens behind the scene.
So in a nutshell, what is the shadow government? The shadow government is a group of very rich, influential people around the world, some of which that are here in the United States, who control and manipulate the policies of world governments. That is what the shadow government is in a nutshell.
Yeah, I confirm this. 100%. I do confirm this.
And so does the shadow government control the government of the United States, the executive branch, Congress, the Senate, the Supreme Court?
Yes, it does. 100%. I do confirm this.
And do the people in our government here in the United States know the shadow government to exist? All of them?
Some of them do, some of them don't.
The president? Is the president aware of the shadow government?
Well, I believe the President Biden has been a politician for the past 50 years. I'm sure that he must be quite familiar with the shadow government. On the other hand, President Trump was not. And that's one of the reasons, if not the reason, we are making an opportunity for President Trump to join us with a parallel government to give full transparency and full disclosure of what goes behind the scene.
Okay, that is extremely, what you just said, it shook me. You said that you are trying to implore President Donald Trump to join you in a parallel government. What do you mean by that? What kind of a parallel government? And yes, just what do you mean by that?
Well, to begin with, implore President Trump is one way to say that we are making an opening for Donald Trump to join the parallel government. What is the parallel government? Parallel government basically is a government in itself. I am the president of the parallel government. They own the 4 data banks in the world. Actually, I did purchase the last 3 data banks on September 1st, 2021. So let me explain what a data bank is, if I may, Stu.
Yeah.
Because people are not familiar with this.
So I want to try to stay, I really want to try to stay focused here, because there's going to be a lot of information, and I don't mind talking to you for multiple segments, but I'd like to stay as focused as possible because there's appears to be a lot to digest here. So first, let's talk about and define the parallel government that you are the president of. What is it that you are asking President Donald Trump to join specifically?
Well, as I said, the parallel government owns the 4 data banks.
Okay.
So we own the truth.
And on these data banks, you say, is all of the truth behind things like, for example, COVID-19, and all sorts of other things that are very important to people's daily lives. Is that correct?
It is correct. I just want to add something about COVID-19. Yes, we do have gathered all of the most sensitive information starting November 8, 2001 up to date. COVID-19, I want to make this very clear. In 2014, few months prior to the ending of all of my governmental contracts, I was asked by a president of a country if I wanted to be part of a strategy directly related to the work of the Gates Foundation in Africa. And I at the time, I immediately replied by saying, you know very well that a few months from now, I will no longer be part of any contracts with you. So no, I don't want to be part of any agenda past the 31st of December 2014.
Okay, just to be clear
Yes.
here, I want everybody to understand what you just said.
Yeah.
The sitting president of a country asked you if you wanted to be involved with the works of the Gates Foundation in Africa.
Yeah.
And
well,
is that
not with the work of the Gates Foundation, with an event that will take place in 2020 related to the work of the Gates Foundation. It's a big difference. I would not be part of any work with the Gates Foundation.
And is that
a consultant?
Is that
Excuse me?
Is that 2020 event that you're referring to what we now know as COVID-19?
Well, apparently in 2020 you have an agenda called COVID-19. So I think you can link the two, but I'm saying that this what happened and what I was asked at the time. So I'm very careful with the words that I'm using. Now I can tell you also, when I left in 2015, I was in a meeting with and I can name this place because I think with the people of the shadow government, they need to understand today that we are on our way, not to create conflict with them, but to bring them back to values of humanity. So I will state this location in Kabdai, very well known. It's owned by a president of Africa. It's a beautiful estate. And I was there a few days ago, and I was there in 2015 when I was being asked again if I wanted to be part of this new agenda for 2020. And I replied again that I had no business to do with this. So now if you want to link both this meeting with COVID-19, you're welcome to do so, Stu.
Well, it doesn't seem like a coincidence, and I'm not much of a believer in coincidence.
I might share the same opinion than you, with you.
So who's in this shadow government? 38 people, you said. Who are they?
Well, there are some people that are very well known in America. I would,
do you want to name them?
Few of them, yes, but not all of them, because I'm not here to create a conflict. No matter what, we all know that Bill Gates has been very much part of behind the scene. His finances, OMS. Actually, Mr. Gates, and I'm pleased to, I want to take this moment to address a personal message to Bill Gates. And hopefully you'll hear me. Mr. Gates, you know very well that we've known very well the work that you've done for the past 15 years. And I have a problem with you and Mr. Warren Buffett also. Apparently, you've been financing billions of euros all over the continent of Africa. And I've been there, and I know very well some of the countries. And so far, I haven't seen really the great work that you've said you've done. So the same way as I'm going to be doing for the American people and for the rest of the world, that I will show you, that I will show proof of what I say, all the allegations that I make. I'd like to ask you for an audit, Mr. Gates, including Mr. Buffett. You know, this is not just anything when you say you want to help the world and you want to save humanity and you pledge billions and billions of euros. And it doesn't seem that he has worked too well on the continent of Africa. And if I may, yeah, you know, Mr. Gates, also, I could invite Stu for a 3-month trip in Africa. I can gather €1 billion in cash, no problem. I have access to this. And what we will do, we will take the €1 billion inside a suitcase. I'll make sure that there will be no one during our journey that will stop us or try to rob us. And we'll do the whole tour of Africa, and we will try just to feed all the children of Africa. And I can sign at this moment on this interview that we will have at least $250 million left in the suitcase. And at the same time, we would have fed all of the children in Africa. So there is something that doesn't make any sense when you replace billions and billions. And where are they going? Are they going to some work that you do on the side, dealing with vaccination or injection, should I say? This is a big thing, Mr. Gates. You know what? I'm not here to create, as I said, any conflict. I just want full transparency. But when someone like you, who has a very predominant position and make statements like you do, like me, you have to prove them. So we, I'll be, we have a very good offices even here. I am the head of a government. We could study all the audit you will be sending. Please feel free to go through the intermediaries too. And I will divulge this all over the world if indeed you have showing me proof of the good work that you do, including Mr. Buffett. That's basically the personal message I wanted to address to Mr. Gates. So yes, he's part of the 38, among few others. But again, Stu, this is not what I want to make sure, and I made this very clear to the shadow government on October 3rd, 2021, a few days ago.
Yeah,
I said
that was just a few days ago.
Excuse me?
Yes, that was just a week ago.
Yeah, a few days ago. I was in Kabdai with the representative of the shadow government, and they asked me very simply, because I want to be fully transparent in your program, what is your agenda, Mr. Argillier? I said, oh, wait a minute. You're asking me to give you my agenda? Wow, I think you've known me better than this. What I can tell you, on the other hand, my agenda is not to create any conflict. So you have two options: to follow us, to follow the great work of the parallel government that I own, that I'm president of, that is here to bring back humanity to the world. And at the same time, you have option 1 to join us, option 2 to get out of the way. No option 3, do not interfere. I repeat, do not interfere. And I also take advantage of this interview right now to send a very straightforward message to the shadow government that is listening to me. Do not interfere. This is not a threat. It is an advice from the consultant that you've known for many years. Go ahead, Stu.
So the shadow government, Bill Gates being one of these people that you have now named, are they aware of the information that you allege to be in possession of on these databanks, or do they know what's on them?
Obviously not. That's the power of our intelligence. What you have to keep in mind, what makes the difference of databanks from the parallel government versus databanks intelligence from the official government? FBI, CIA, Homeland Securities, they do have their own databanks on you and on all the people of the world, except they keep this information for themselves. Our databank, our intelligence, is here to provide the information. We do not divulge the information. We make the information available. Then comes whistleblowers. But again, we're not whistleblowers. We own databanks, except that we feel responsible because we have a moral consciousness, a moral obligation to state the truth and to give transparency to all of the people of the world. So what we do is like you have something great and you make it available. Then things happen with it. And I could actually, I have a few notes. I'm sure you have known at the time, You've heard about the Panama Papers. You've heard about the Paradise Paper. You've heard about the Pandora Papers, including 2 states of the United States that act as most incredible offshore companies. So I believe also the United States of America needs to remain a little more humble, because it is a land of opportunity, but at the same time, the government of the United States of America is not that transparent. And so this is also something that has been triggered our decision to bring President Trump with us, likely in 2024. I believe that, to me anyway, he is the president of the United States of America. I know you had a few conversations with Maria Zach regarding the file of Leonardo. I can tell you for a fact one thing, and I'm giving you the exact date. On December 18, 2018, Donald Trump from the White House announced the withdrawing of the US troops from Syria. That cost him his presidency. The very next day, we were informed of this. On December 19, 2018, I was the first one to be informed that Donald Trump will no longer be president of the United States of America, starting with 2020. We knew that very, very well. Why? Because by doing it so, he was touching the core, the essence of the funding of the shadow government, which is military intervention. And by withdrawing the troops, that would go against, obviously, those fundings.
So military interventions fund the shadow government.
I couldn't hear that, Stu. I'm sorry.
Military interventions fund the or the shadow government.
Indirectly, yes. Yes. 20 years in Afghanistan, one country, 1.7 trillion American dollars. You know what you can do with this money in your country? And times, so, and also, what are we doing? It's the same thing with my country, France. What are we doing always sending troops to some countries that never declared any war in return? Isn't it interesting that each of all military intervention are always held in countries in the midst of big, major economical interest? This has to be disclosed too. This has to be disclosed because we can no longer send our troops to literally kill other people on behalf of the very few to keep up their own interest versus the interest of 323 million American people? No.
This is why
the interest of 30 billion people.
This is why, by and large, the American people are starting to be really against military interventions, specifically nation building. What did we accomplish in Afghanistan? I mean, we taught Pashtun tribesmen the importance of transgender acceptance. We built schools that later became bomb factories. It was a complete calamity. And we were there for 20 years, as you said. Most of the people that were fighting there on the last day in Afghanistan were not even born or were just small infants when those towers came down in New York City on September 11th. They don't even know why they're there. So we have said that by and large, people being against these military interventions, that the warmongering elites, that's how we refer to them. George W. Bush is one of them, a warmongering elite that enriched himself and his family and repaid his special interests through war, through the military-industrial complex. And so they have to figure out a way to combat that and to still raise money. And my question is, did the work of Bill Gates, did COVID-19 replace military interventions?
Have you worked for a data bank? I don't know. I'm asking you. You seem very, very well informed, or you do incredible reasoning. Yes, that's beautiful. That's exactly what it is. And let me tell you one thing, and that's one of the most important, the core of my personal mission about military interventions. Most of them are always linked to fight terrorism, right?
Always.
It's September 11, 2001. Wow. Triggered the declaration of war of Iraq. And to begin with, Iraq had no nuclear weapon whatsoever, and we found this out very quickly after the declaration of war. But terrorism cannot be and will not be anymore used as an excuse to send troops. And I state this on behalf of the parallel government. Enough is enough. My own daughter, on July 14, 2016, was almost ran down by a truck who killed 86 people on Promenade des Anglais. 10 years ago, even though I'm saying a statement here that I want to make sure that is heard, we do not have any affiliation whatsoever with any terrorist group in the world. I repeat, we do not have any affiliation with any terrorist group in the world. On the other hand, 10 years ago, we knew very well that they wanted to be heard. They wanted to be recognized as a true entity, governmental. And I can tell you for a fact, being there, being in a room, because I was in the room, no negotiation, nothing was enabled them to even have a return of any type of communication, building more and more pressure, leading to terrorist acts. And I'm going to tell you one thing. I knew from the very beginning that they wanted to be heard. This happened, Afghanistan, Taliban, Kabul, very clear. Finally, the new generation said, and I will not name today the name of certain countries who funded terrorist actions.
Well, we know that
Yes.
one of them is Iran, obviously. I mean, they are the world's leading state sponsor of terror. But when you talk about the Taliban am I wrong?
There are also other countries that you might be very familiar with.
I'm sure.
And you would be very surprised.
The fact is that nobody on the planet, no supposedly free individual, no person that wants to step out of their front door and trust a government is for them, most of them are under the illusion that that's the case. That is not the case. Your government is not acting in your best interest. Your government is run by people who are self-enriching and operating in their own interest. They want to rule the world. They want two classes, the elite ruling class and the subservient class of slaves that do what they're told or die.
That's exactly what most elected governments are. Yes. And the reason I said, I refer to my own daughter, and this triggered something in me. I said, this is it. And we must stop this lie regarding all the military intervention directly linked to terrorism. On November 2015, I'm sure you remember the horrible thing that happened in Bataclan. These people who killed 135 French people while they were attending a concert. One thing that there was not on mainstream media, the one actually shooting all of our French people was reloading his gun every few minutes because he had not enough bullets to kill all of them. And every time he reloaded his gun, he said, I am doing exactly what you people are doing to my people. Getting involved in affairs that you don't have anything to do with. And yes, I confirm that most of our military intervention are based upon economical reason and not based upon fighting terrorism. And that's something that must be eradicated because people die because of this. My daughter almost died because of that.
So you mentioned on September 1st of this year, that's just over a month ago now, you purchased 3 databanks. Is that right? Did I have that date correct? And that's what you indeed did. You purchased 3 databanks on September 1st.
And that's right. Let me tell you the history of the 3 databanks very quickly. When I first created mine on November 8, 2001, few of my consultants that worked with me created their own. And we basically went separate because they worked with different countries. And it was understood that it would be a very legitimate cause to gather as much information as we can along the way, working with governments. And at one point, those 3 databanks became very, very powerful also. And you heard most of the things you've seen, including the last Pandora papers, come from our databanks. As simple as this. There is not any, the source of it. Then, as I said, the information being made available, people get it and then send it to the ICIJ and things like that. And then they do their own work.
So who did you buy them from?
My 3 I could refer them as friends. They owned the 3 other data banks, and this is something we discussed for almost a year. And I said it was about time for me to go ahead and, no matter what, I had a veto order on those. I don't know if you understand what it means. This means that anytime they had to release or to give the information available, they asked me if I was okay or not. So I could have said yes, or I could have said no. Since I had pretty much a good hand on those data banks, it was time for them to go and for me to gather all the intelligence under one roof. And that's why we are so powerful today. The 4 data banks are basically owned by one individual, myself, and conducting the activities of the RDH and HRU that we are trying at this moment. I said trying because where do you start?
Julian Assange is sitting in jail right now.
Excuse me?
Julian Assange is sitting in jail
Yes.
right now because he had information, because he was releasing that information. There are people all over the world that are killed for possessing information much less consequential than what you are saying that you have. Are you worried about your safety?
Well, my safety is based upon my data banks, and obviously we are all concerned about the safety. This is again something personal that I am doing, but again, I'm not here to create any conflict, and I have not released one single information from any of my data banks. I made the information available. That's totally different.
So did you document, as part of these databanks, did you document corruption, criminal activity?
Unfortunately, most of the documents we have are related to, yes, corrupted the actions of many individuals, not only limited to governments. Yes, but again, Stu, I am, and the reason I'm insisting on this, because I know what can happen after the interview is aired out. I, Philippe Argillier, I have never divulged any information whatsoever from my data banks. What I did, on the other hand, versus the intelligence of official government, I made this information available for individuals who had some personal mission also. They wanted to do some good work and then decided to act as whistleblowers, and they took the chances and the risk. But as data banks, we're crystal clear. We've never divulged anything ourselves. Never. It's a big difference.
So of the 38 people in the shadow government, only one of which you've named here, Bill Gates. Are there different names on these databanks that are involved with this corruption? Can you provide names of any individuals who are part of your databanks?
Well, obviously, there are a lot of names, but like I told on the 3rd of October, a few days ago, to the representative of the shadow government, my goal is not to create any conflict and is not to take anyone down. And I'm going to tell you why. Because what I could do, Stu, it would be even easier. I'm not doing, I tell you, we stop this interview, you forget about Philippe Argillier, I call Maria, I said, drop the whole thing. I go hide somewhere in the world. I can. I can afford it. I can do anything I want. And then I say, okay, I push the button, take my phone, and I send the information. I can tell you, if I were to do so, at least 3 governments within 16 hours will go down the drain. Most of the big CEO that you know will have to face court. But what's the next step? The problem is, if I were to do this, I would be making a huge opening for more evil. So what I have to do, I got to be very careful. If I indeed move forward and release myself some information, I want to make sure that I am already placed for the outcome of releasing this information, making sure that this is in the hands of the right individual, because taking down individuals is very easy to do. But what is the next step? So I'm not here to take anyone down. I'm here to raise the consciousness of these individuals who have done the wrong work, who forgot somewhere, somehow, what humanity was all about. And too bad for them. Tough luck.
Okay, yes, so that sounds like leverage or the inflation of bribery. So if you plan to use damning information from your databanks as leverage against these individuals to force their compliance, how's that any different from the corrupt politicians that we see today?
It's a different world. To begin with, I'm not using anything against them. They know that I have information on them. That's totally different. The only thing I'm saying to them, I'm not here to create any conflict. Best of all all the information we have will go down the drain. On the other hand, join us. That's the best thing to do. It's no threat. It's not at all how you described it at all. I'm crystal clear. I'm not here to say, wait a minute, if you don't do this, you'll see what's going to happen to you. On the other hand, I said, please, the gate is wide open.
And do you think that the knowledge that this shadow government or the people who are in your data banks are aware that if that information were to be exposed, that it could be damning for them?
Not damaging, lethal. Some of them would be over.
What evidence do you have to prove that these data banks actually exist?
Excuse me?
What evidence do you have to prove that these data banks actually exist?
You're asking me if right now I will show you an evidence that this data bank, that we have proof of what we are saying at this moment?
I'm asking if you have proof that the data banks actually exist at this moment. Yes. Are you willing to provide any proof of that?
Obviously, I do. And actually, when I spoke to you before, I told you some of the file that I could dish out at this moment, they are not too sensitive, could be linked to some with Democrat government at the time, Chinese government, including with His Holiness the Dalai Lama, that we worked his way back to Tibet. And the actual Obama's administration directly came very strong with Mr. Green. Actually, maybe he's hearing me, he's still working for the government, that spoke on behalf of the Tibetan government, saying that His Holiness the Dalai Lama didn't even want to go back to Tibet, and he was just, any relationship with me was not welcome. And actually, I had this written on behalf of the American government. But happened that the very next day from Dharamsala, the Prime Minister, Samdam Rinpoche, wrote me a letter stating that he had nothing to do with Mr. Green, that they were not even authorized to speak on behalf of the Tibetan government, and that it was not any of their business. So oddly enough, yeah, I can obviously anytime show you this, prove that with official seal of documents. You're going to tell me this is not relevant to COVID-19 and so forth. But again, what I cannot do is jeopardize the agenda, the strategy that I put in place for 7 years too. And as I said, if the people, if what they've seen lately, the Pandora Papers, is not sufficient for them, they'll just have to wait and see. You will see for yourself that particularly if President Trump join us with the United States of America on an official status, because we do have a very important date in France, which is April 2022. If both government, France and the US, get together on the agenda of the parallel government, I can confirm today that the shadow government will be eradicated once and for all. And regarding 2022, I want to make clear for the people who are going to go to humanrightsunity.com, they might think that I would be running for president of France. I will never have the audacity to do so. On the other hand, I made it very clear to the French people that I will answer their call, because since 2018, I was grotesquely censored by the French government for 2 years. And I believe censorship is criminal. Emmanuel Macron himself made sure that RDH would to be censored in all media in France. And that's exactly what happened. 3 magazines were paid to post hoax on me. And actually, I would address also a personal message. I don't even remember his name. His name is Sundar Pichai. Apparently, he's the CEO of Google. Pretty good position. Mr. Pichai, I think you should review also the values of who you are, and when it comes to humanity values. Your director of France, Sébastien Missoff, made sure for 2 years to post those 3 articles about me. They even say that my father, who was a very well-known figure in the resistance, he was the first one to join General de Gaulle, was not my father. They came up with lies that were so grotesque, and they kept those lies, including today. For anyone that listens to me, they're going to go on Google Philippe Argillier, and you're going to see those 3 articles regarding Philippe Argillier, and it's LCI and those magazines. And this is criminal also. And censorship, and I'm not the only one, far from it. It's still something that we are censoring the people who are going out of their way to bring transparency. We are censoring the people who are going against the system. At one point, the shadow government that is censoring all of these individuals will have to understand their timing is getting shorter and shorter. And again, this is not a threat. It is part of the evolution. I could not have done that 10 years ago, Stu, because you were not there, and people like you bringing my voice and having my face seen all over. Today, we can reach billions of people in a blink of an eye. Today, we stop this interview, I can release an information, and before even you get back to your home, you'll be fully informed. So the power lies in communication. And that's why we have to use those incredible tools to bring love, peace, and justice for the people, and not like Mr. Pichai is doing with Google when he takes down anyone there goes against the government, including Mr. Zuckerberg, Facebook. He's not the owner of Facebook, and he knows this very well.
Wait a minute. Mark Zuckerberg doesn't own Facebook?
Obviously not. Please, too. This is a grotesque thing to say that the government owns Facebook. When you become that powerful, it's a big masquerade.
What government owns Facebook?
On papers, he owns it. He has nothing to say about it. And that's the reason he's still going around. We know that very well. Government work differently.
What government owns Facebook?
Well, the US. It's clear, but we all know this. This is not just anything. This doesn't need to come from a data bank. It's clear. Stu, do you think that they will let one individual, Mark Zuckerberg, own an entity? They own all the information of most of the people of the world? At one point, it's like myself as a consultant. We get together in a room. We say, well, we have something to tell you, to ask you. And I'm sure this must have taken place. Okay, now you're the front man of Facebook, but we'll be running this. Otherwise, it would be too lethal. It's clear.
Which is why when Facebook allegedly went offline the other day, and so-called media outlets, journalists, which means lying propagandists, said that Zuckerberg lost $6 billion in those few hours. He didn't lose anything. The American taxpayers did, didn't they?
That's right. Keep in mind, billionaires never lose anything. Billionaires never pay any taxes. Billionaires, one of the 38, run the daily lives of 8 billion people on Earth. And this must end. And again, and I'm being very clear for all the people who are listening to me, you do not believe me, I am perfectly fine. Same way as you believe me, because I know I'm doing what I need to do for my consciousness. That's all I have to tell them. On the other hand, if you join me with the work, the transparency that we're willing to divulge, the power that we have against the shadow government, I can tell you within the next month, your life would be totally different.
Okay, well, you're appealing to hundreds of thousands instantaneously, millions of people that are going to view this interview in some way, shape, or form. And I would be willing to bet that of those people, close to 100% of them are in a moment of desperation in their life. They want all of this to be exposed. They want all of these people to be held accountable. They want their lives to return to normal. They want freedom, and they want to know a timeline. When is this nonsense going to stop, and can you and these data banks help stop it?
Yeah, Stu, one of the best questions ever. I'm asking the millions of people who are listening to me at this moment to trust the process. This is not an overnight sensation that we decide to create. This is 20 years of work. Last 6 years, 24/7, to put a strategy that makes sense. You cannot put down a shadow government that has been holding the power from A to Z overnight. And if you were to do so by releasing information, you'll do more damage. You have to trust the process. And the process is the following. We will be more and more present and behind the scene with the people of the shadow government. As I said,
you broke up for a second. You broke up for a second there. The process is what?
The process that we are doing.
Yeah, you said that people have to trust the process. And just so you know, here in America, so many people have been told trust the plan for a very long time in relation to the stolen election and so on. So that's why I want you to be very specific here. Excuse me, but it cut out there. Our connection cut out. So you were about to say the process is this. What is the process?
Yeah, well, to begin with, as a track record since 2015, starting with 2016, the Panama Papers, we do have a track record. So that comes from data banks, that's the source. The process is the following, that for the next 36 months, we will be positioning ideal would be France and the US into a status that have the hands of the parallel government, which means the data banks that we have no willingness to use. But at the same time, while heading to the 36 month, we would be little by little making a clear understanding on certain aspects of government, particularly geopolitical agreements that are very sensitive and that very few have access to, including with the interests of China behind the scene, that they will have to evolve with our agenda, that is the agenda of most of the people on earth today. So they will, and you will see for yourself, many things that are going to appear, things that you're going to link directly to data banks, and you will see already that a move towards more transparency will happen. But it's going to take some time because against two, we are not here to create any conflict. And the best, if I truly successful in what I do, if truly I succeed, this means that I would not even have the need to divulge one element because it would be sufficient with the work that we're doing today and with the understanding that they know that we do have this information on them to work with us. So it's not a wartime. I want to bring peace to a world that only has known war. And I know this can be done because the power of love, the power of God is the one that wins all the time. And this is where I stand.
Are all of the people in government that are aware of the existence of these data banks understand the implications of you beginning to speak out like this and break through the barriers of censorship that you have faced in France?
Yes.
And do you believe that in a very timely fashion, these people will start to react to this interview? Will we see a significant slowdown in things that people can use as a marker or a gauge to help verify the validity of your message?
I believe so, and I'm waiting for, and I can, since, you asked me the question, and since I have nothing to hide, they are waiting to see, and myself, to see if President Trump will answer the call. He knows where to reach me through Maria, Zach, and we can talk. And yes, that will also be a big part of joining force with RDH in France. So you see, I'm being very transparent. I'm not asking Donald Trump to call me behind the scene. If he hears this, my best advice I could give him is to move forward with this, because the information I have is that the shadow government have all intention for him not to be back in 2024. And I can confirm that.
So what you're saying is that the decision has already been made by the shadow government.
Yes.
And there's nothing that Donald Trump or fundraising or anything can do about it.
Nothing.
But that Donald Trump will never be president again.
Donald Trump will never be president of the United States of America. if he's not moving forward with the parallel government. Shadow government will take him down the same way they did in 2020. I can confirm that.
Who made the decision to steal the election? Was this a global conspiracy?
Well, I think Maria Zach is the one who gave you as much as information on this, and that I'm not going to step on her ground.
Okay. Well, the information that you have already provided us, I'm assuming that you're going to send me what you said about the Dalai Lama and Obama. You're going to send me something that I can show our viewers. Is that right? Did you say that you're going to do that?
Yes, I will send it to you. Yes.
And
I'll send it to you, and you'll decide if you want to go ahead and share this. But this is, I think it's relevant, yes, because it shows, even though again it's not major geopolitical conflict, but it is still. I met His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 2008. We had a wonderful encounter. And I hosted his prime minister for 4 days in my estate in Beverly Hills, Sandom Rinpoche. And we had him even linked to the most powerful financial program for the children of the world. I will send you documents that you will see that he was actually press conference that he was supposed to do in New York. I'm the one who canceled it. For the very first time, His Holiness said yes to hold a credit card and saying this is the right thing to do. Yes, obviously, no problem. I'll send this to you with great pleasure, Stu.
There are a lot of events that have happened around the United States, that have happened abroad, around the world, that are very important to people. We mentioned one of them being 9/11. You have trivial things like the death of Michael Jackson, for example. Things that may not be major geopolitical conflicts like Barack Obama and His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Mass shooters in Las Vegas, and where did Greta Thunberg come from, and whose agenda is she a part of?
Well,
and all of these things, they're just things of very significant importance that have changed the landscape of our country and the world as a result of that. It has changed the way classrooms indoctrinate our children. Marxist infiltration, ideologies relating to transgender acceptance, and racism in critical race theory being taught in our schools. All of these things may seem very small independently and on their own, but together they are all part of a much bigger agenda.
You're totally right. And you mentioned Michael Jackson, if I may, Stu.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that in 2008, I received a phone call from a dear friend asking me that if I were willing to meet with Michael Jackson, and I was kind of surprised. And I said, what is this regarding? And apparently he knew and he heard about this incredible work that we did with this humanitarian program where His Holiness the Dalai Lama was involved. And I basically wanted to meet with me. And at the time, I declined the invitation. I said to my friend, I said, tell him that I cannot meet with him because there was still the thing going with, the children and the lawsuit and so forth. But then again, he insisted so much. And at one point I said to my friend, okay, give him my phone number. And he called me. And when he called me from private, so most of the call I get is from private callers. So I say, hello. And I, hello. And immediately I said, oh, Michael, how are you? He said, thank you for allowing me to speak to you. That was Michael Jackson speaking to me. And he spoke for 40 minutes. And he said, listen, I must meet with you. This is for my moral legacy. I need to tell you what is going on. I don't know you, but I trust you for what I've seen, what I've heard. And I said, listen, we're heading to Las Vegas. My younger daughter will be celebrating her third birthday. Let's meet. And then we met. And that was beginning of 2008. Basically, I almost met on I'm not going to say a twin brother, but he fell in my arms. There was Paris, there was Blanket, there was Prince. We were in a hotel. I had all my bodyguards in one side. Basically, we had the whole floor of the Palm Hotel in Las Vegas. And then I sat down with him. And at the time, I wanted to buy back the Bill's library. And I actually had set funds, 350 million US to buy it. and he told me there was nothing he could do with this because Sony had taken this as a collateral. And basically, he told me I'm bankrupt. But what he said to me, and we spent, many, many days in Las Vegas with my family, his children, and my children. He said, Philippe, they want to kill me. I'm going to be murdered. That's exactly what he said. And he said, please, can I count on you, even though I do not know you, to bring my moral legacy to Blanket, Prince, and Paris the day I'm gone? I said, well, Michael, who wants to kill you? This is just give me more info. And then he sat down with me and told me about someone called Dr. Tomei. There was they negotiated. There was at the time negotiating with Randy Phillips, the concert in London with AG. And at the same time, he was this business advisor who sold Neverland to a friend of Donald Trump. At the time was Thomas Barak, is a businessman that actually came to my estate. We spent the whole afternoon together because I wanted to buy back Neverland. I said, you know what, Michael, what we're going to do? I'm buying back Neverland, and we're just going to put the two families together, and we're going to work on bringing you on the true legacy that you want. And he said, that's all I want. I don't want to be known as the king of Pope anymore. I want to be known as really the one for the children of the world. And that's exactly what he wanted. He confirmed that he would be doing for our program called Affinity Payment Services, APS. All of the Michael Jackson Trust are fully familiar with, because after his death, they came to my estate with all the lawyers trying to negotiate with me the outcome of what I would be willing to pay to get some Michael Jackson cover after he was dead. That was too late. And basically, everything was set to go, Stu. Michael was supposed to get with the family. We spent time with Prince, flying helicopters and so forth. And one night, while all this was happening, I received a phone call from my business advisors from Luxembourg and said, listen, we are being blackmailed. I said, what do you mean? He said, it's very simple. You pay 20 million US and you have Michael Jackson, and that came from directly Mr. Tomei at the time, or you drop and Michael Jackson will never be part of your program. Obviously, I am not going to let some kind of a Hollywood, whoever he is, tell me what to do or not to do. Next day, I wanted to call Michael Jackson immediately. I couldn't reach him anymore. And for that point, he basically had no contact with us, except for his nanny. They came to a good friend and said, I want to relay the message. And Michael is crying every night. He wants to get back to you, Philippe, and to you, the friend in question. And he wants to get back to the APS program, but they will not let him. And basically is confirming that he will be murdered. That's exactly what was stated by him to me and by his nurse to our friend. And indeed, he died. And I can tell you for a fact, I do have actually emails sent back and forth. And at one point, I will be meeting with Prince, with Paris, and with Blanket. Blanket, I believe, just turned 18 years old. And I will tell them in a closed room exactly what their father told me to tell them. So, yes, I was very close to Michael, and I do know what happened when it comes to his death, very clearly.
We've been talking for about an hour here with Philippe Argillier, who has told us that he is in possession of 4 databanks, 3 of which were just purchased. You have said that these people have tried to purchase these databanks from you, that they have offered you over 3 billion euros for these. Is that correct?
No. Very recently, I was offered 20 billion euros and for the 4 databanks. And I can confirm that Maria was offered 5 million euros to seize all activities of Nations in Action. And the 3.7 billion euros that you are referring to, that is totally different. That's the money that is owed to me by the governments that I work for. And actually, feel free to go on humanrightsunity.com. You go on The Creditor. It's a book that will be out when the timing is right. and you will read more about what happened behind the scene.
Is there anything that we did not talk about today that you want to make sure that the world or world leaders or members of the shadow government or those who are named inside of your databanks, is there a final message that you want to give to any of those people or to the people like me that are raising children?
The final message I want to give is not to the people of the shadow government. I want to address this message to the millions of people who are going to be listening to me. I'm going to ask you to call upon your consciousness. If you do not believe everything I said, it is your right. On the other hand, it would be the greatest mistake because you do not lie on love, on peace and justice. And to begin with, when you have someone like me that is willing to move forward, take many, many risks on behalf of the well-being of humanity. So again, it will be up to you. But if you decide not to believe me, I'm fine, because I know that I did what I had to do in order to save you and to save your children and generations to come. That's what I have to say, Stu.
Philippe Argillier, thank you for coming. God bless you.